I'm Matthew Crabb. I'm CEO of QA Financial, and today I'm in conversation with Srirang Srikantha, who is COO and one of the founders of Yethi Consulting, the Bangalore-based software engineering and development company that specializes in banking, the banking sector. Srirang, welcome to the interview. Please start by telling us a little bit about the background of Yeti and why you have this focus on banking and financial services.
Right. Thanks, Matthew, for having me. Yes, we are a difficult niche to categorize in because we mix two different worlds. We mix the world of software development for testing automation solutions, and we also provide great QA services to our customers. And the focus on banking comes from, I think, two major reasons. One of them being that me and my co-founders, we spent about 20-30 years as a part of banking technology before we started the company. And to that respect, I think, this is the industry that we are familiar with. This is an industry that we are comfortable with. And that was one reason. The other reason I feel is banking is a vast area where there's a lot of different niches. There's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of change which is happening. And there's a lot which needs to be done within the financial services sector. And this is the only sector which I see relies to a large extent on the use of technology to support operations. The growth of the larger banks today has essentially happened because of their embracing technology to a large extent. And that's where we can step in and add value to the business of our customers.
Now, I know that everybody's talking about how the COVID pandemic has accelerated the digitization of banking and banking services. But equally, right, I know that there's actually a more complex picture that I'd like you to talk about, which is about this sort of bifurcation of the way in which banks are organizing their technology, the bifurcation between back office and core services, perhaps, but also the different path that all the other customer-facing digital services that actually create that competitive edge are being brought back in-house. Tell us about that trend.
Yeah, so these are one of those things, you've been long enough in an industry and you see how the trends have moved. 20 years ago, it was all about, core technology transformation. How do you get the back office engine up and running and up to speed with a lot of things? And in the last 10 years, the huge difference has been that customer service, self-service has been something of primary importance. But a lot of it is geared to very simple internet banking, mobile banking kind of an atmosphere where you're essentially allowing customers to initiate some transactions. You're allowing customers to check for information and so on. And it's not been a true, digital collaboration between customer and service provider. And what we're seeing in the last 3 years, 4 years, especially accelerated by the pandemic, is a couple of things. The first one is back office platforms are becoming larger, but they're renegated to what they were in back office, and their banks are comfortable buying commercial off-the-shelf products, and the amount of innovation required to make those engines work is being essentially brought in by the service providers, by the OEMs. Whereas banks are concentrating a lot on what I call as the edge of the organization, the envelope where customer and the service provider bank employees are interacting. So these are things like at the point of collaboration, which is if you want to start a new transaction, if you want to start a new relationship, how do I get through KYC? How do I get through my credit checks? How do I get through my eligibility and so on? It is also extended to what essentially was a process of how do you enable retail transactions or retail onboarding to a lot of what can I do? How can I help corporates? So this is where you see a lot of API-based banking come into picture. This is where you see PSD2 kind of norms coming into it. So the way we are looking at it, there's a confluence of forces coming in from the regulator, which is from the market and from the vendors. And some of these things which will also manifest itself in, you could correlate between what's happening with the vendor provided ecosystem with what's happening in the market. We've all seen a huge growth in transactions, payment transactions, supported by the arrival of Amazons in each of our geographies, by e-commerce growth in the geographies, by the larger acceptance of card. And this is translated to the fact that most OEMs are now pulling out payment from the core engine of their offerings. Most core banking system providers are pulling that out, making it a more robust platform, and bringing it in as standalone, independent payment hubs into banks. And banks have been investing in these. And when I talk about these banks, I'm talking about the small regional banks and not your large, international players who've had world-class infrastructure, who have had world-class architecture for a long time. But for the remaining 90% of the service providers out there, banks out there, who are now starting to adopt or starting to support large payment transactions or starting to support large payment volumes, what we see is, some things like this come together. And another aspect in this whole journey is we see the resurgence of in-house development, product management functions within banks, where they are taking complete control of the customer experience. And they're not relying on vendor-provided solutions, but they're relying more on picking up frameworks from OEMs or vendors or providers and building great customer experiences for the subsegment that they are actually targeting. And this comes to you in terms of mobile apps. This comes to you in terms of, a better internet banking experience. This comes to you in terms of collaboration with third parties, account aggregators, service providers, investment advisors, and so on. And that's where we see a lot of innovation happening today, and a lot of a great need for QA to come in and support business as they are trying to bring in a lot more independence and customer focus into the edge part of their ecosystem.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we've seen core bank, just for example, the providers of core banking services like Temenos gathering a lot more new customers over the past couple of years. And at the same time, as you described, we're seeing smaller regional local banks fighting back against the neobanks and the fintech platforms, using their access to technology to improve their competitive edge and win and keep customers with interesting apps that you talked about.
Right.
Banking.
Yeah.
So can you give me a couple of examples of how you've worked with your customers on those two different paths to help them push along?
Right. So two very interesting examples, and I would like to start on with what's happening on the digital world and what's the challenges that it brings. We all know that mobile banking is the way to go. What's interesting from a QA perspective is mobile is not a stable ecosystem. It's not a static ecosystem. It's an ecosystem that's evolving at a pace which most banking technology folks have not seen for a long time. It evolves every 6 weeks. In my view, it evolves every 6 weeks. It evolves where the list of possibilities increases, the list of ecosystems in terms of the mobile providers. You have Huawei, you have Samsung, you have so many new providers who are there in the market, and each of them have a tweak on the Android platform, which is very different, very unique. And from a technologist perspective, from a service provider perspective, these are in separate channels which we need to support. And we had a client who came to us and said, is it possible that you can validate whether my app, our app, which we've designed for the retail segment, does it render, does it work across, let's say, 100 different platforms? And the whole idea was, we had, like most of these assignments, someone discovers the challenge a little late into the life cycle, and we had about 2 weeks to get this up and running. And so we collaborated with a device farm provider, and we set Tenjin, which is our in-house test automation platform, working for them across 2 weeks, and we were able to repeatedly take those few transactions through 100 different devices, and we essentially do it on a hands-off, lights-off mode, which means that you're not expending precious manpower into doing something as tedious as this, but you get the reliability that you want, and you're able to fix things easier and faster, and that's what automation should be about: taking human drudgery out of human activity and allowing machines, which are far superior in their ability to do repetitive tasks, to take this on. And that was one. But on the and that's the kind of challenge which we see is going to increase on the digital platform, because the digital platforms are highly fragmented. There are multiple versions of it, and in order to give all our customers an equal experience, we need to take the effort as bankers, as banking technologists, to go the extra mile and see if it's working everywhere. And that's simplistically saying that we need to test it out everywhere, and that's what we try to work with our customers, and make that as painless a journey as possible, as easy a journey as possible, as repeatable a process as possible, because you're not going to do this once. You're going to come back and do this every 6 weeks going forward, because suddenly you realize you are the product owners. You are, as bankers, the mobile app. That's where the banking fraternity, they maintain that relationship. And what you're trying to do is say you have a great franchise which has great customer service when someone walks into the branch. Is it the same customer service that you get when you log into a mobile phone or an internet banking site? And we have to make sure that that's the same level of service. And what's happening today is you have a lot more options of what you could do on the digital front than what you could do and it's almost equaling what you could do in the branch, and that's what we need to support.
And I assume it's the same principle with the commercial off-the-shelf platforms and services, the COTS, SaaS services. It's continuous improvement, continuous change. Banks are also more dependent on these core banking and other COTS providers.
In some ways, the challenge on the back office side or vendor provided platforms are similar. In some ways, they're very different. In the ways they're similar is because the OEM, the COTS providers are also struggling through the same process of how do they improve release cycles, how do they fasten release cycles, because they're now working with hundreds and thousands of customers across the globe, and they're trying to maintain a single version, and they're forcing customers to pick up patches on a weekly, on a monthly basis. And banks, anyone who's buying a COTS platform or a large transaction system has the onus of deploying these changes continuously. So on the other side, you have the ecosystem which is changing. On this side, where the platform is being enhanced, it's being improved, it's being bug fixes, security enhancements. All of these are coming in, but it is for every organization to validate whether all of these changes work in tandem with what they already have, and it's for each bank to figure that out, and each bank to see how they could crunch the cycle time between when they get a new release from their vendor to when they put it into production. And the journey of QA starts over there, and what we try to do is, can we shorten that? Can we reduce risk over there? Can we increase reliability, dependability at that site too?
This is a huge challenge, though, isn't it, for banks all over the world? Not only this acceleration that's the result of COVID, but this sweeping technology change, both in the back office central functions and then the customer facing, the competitive pressures. I mean, do you think banks are coping well with this?
Yes and no, because they definitely struggle with keeping pace with that. There is a lot of effort in order to, get a grip on this, on these aspects. Many banks choose to delay such deployments of new and of changes which are coming in from from OEMs, and that kind of impacts their regulatory compliance. It would impact security for them. And so they're taking a conscious call based on available skill sets, based on bandwidth, based on, who's there, who can do things. Some of these things require skills which may not be available in all parts of the world and not in enough volume for people to leverage these pieces. And that was one of the reasons why we chose QA and why we chose this combination of saying we can't be a tool provider, because you need to be there, you need to support customers, and you need to understand the challenges. The whole process of to give you an example, no other industry does accruals, and no other industry needs to do as simple as stuff as an accrual or end of day processing, batch processing. Very few other industries require, and banking requires that. And there is nothing in the wide world available which says, is it possible for you to manage an accrual validation process over the life cycle of a 20-year mortgage? How do you do something like that? Mm-hmm. And can you make it simpler? Yes, there are tools. You have great tools which were essentially built for a dev shop, which were essentially built for a programming community, which are being brought into what should be a business user community. And we want to change that. We want it to be that testing has to be done by business analysts. It has to be done by bankers. It has to be done by people who understand the business, and they have to validate whether software meets their expectations. And is it possible? And what we've done is it is possible. Is it possible for the power of automation or the benefits of automation to be managed, leveraged, and used by this community, instead of having to rely on third parties, instead of having to rely on programmers or technology, so that they see what's the capability, they see what's the possibility, and they are very comfortable when software changes happen, recognizing that it's not impacting business. And that is the bottom line that we need to ensure. That is, from a QA perspective, it should not impact business adversely. That's the first thing. Like, I think most doctors say you shall do no harm. I think most QA folks also should start with the adage saying that the software shall not deteriorate.
Good principle.
So, yes.
And that leads us neatly. You mentioned Tenjin earlier to, really a question about what it does. What does your core tool do, Tenjin?
So that's an interesting thing. We started Tenjin saying, there has to be a simpler way. There can't be hundreds and thousands of scripts. There can't be recordings. There can't be a lot of management overhead for automation to be leveraged. It has to be something which is self-healing, which is simple enough for someone who's more business aligned rather than technology aligned to use. And we started this whole concept of codeless test automation, and we started with application-specific bots, which said that the onus of making sure that we can work with any part of your platform that rests with us as tool providers, and all you have to do is figure out what's the stimulus and what's the expected response that you need to work with. And that was this primary principle that we started off with, and it is a journey which has taken us about 6 years now, where we've now worked with about 90 financial institutions across 22 countries, where we have taken the concept of a codeless automation to help improve the speed with which change can be deployed. Technology change can be adopted. That's something that we've tried to do. It is where the idea is you could build automation capabilities, and you could use that to test anything in a bank, starting from a mobile platform to your API networks, to a core platform, to any workflow system that you have, or even down to your payment messages. All of this you could test and not have to write a single line of code. Not have to write and this would adapt to changes which come in your platforms, all of these platforms. And again, it would adapt without without any programming requirements from your side. And that makes it very powerful. It makes it something that can really support QA teams across the globe in adopting changes and shifting focus from writing and managing scripts to more of, does the software do what business wants it to do? And I think that's what we're trying to do. Make it simpler, make it easier for people to leverage. Test automation is a great concept, but at the end of the day, it's testing that we're doing, and we're automating testing. And so we're trying to say the focus should be on testing and not so much on automation. And that's how Tenjin, what we call as Tenjin Enterprise, started off. And somewhere down the line, we said, listen, there's a whole world of change where it's mobile platforms, where it is digital platforms, and the whole world is moving to SaaS. And I know banks are going to be a little slow to adopt, but there would be those folks who want test automation capabilities to be hosted on a SaaS platform. And let's start investing and building those capabilities right away. And we're very happy to share that we were able to take a lot of our capabilities in Codeless automation and put it up on a SaaS platform, a completely scalable microservices architecture. Fantastic way. And it's completely changed the paradigm of, how is it that you could get a business analyst to build automation scripts for you without having scripts anywhere in the entire platform. And all of this helps because you're going to come up with a challenge of, can I run this on 50 different mobile phones and see whether it's working consistently? Can I have customers who are on different technologies, will it work consistently for them? So challenges like this, I have a deadline, I need to release this in 2 weeks, and I don't have 100 people to do it. Can I rely on technology to do it? And that's what we are trying to support banks.
Excellent. So if anybody watching this video wants to find out more, what do they do?
Well, there are 2 websites. There's yethi.in or Tenjin Online, tenjin online.com. And I think that's a great place to start.
Great. Well, Srirang, thank you very much. Some really interesting perspectives there on the challenges that everybody in banking is facing in bringing technology to bear in these very fast-moving times.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.